Nigeria's housing crisis has deepened into a national emergency, with soaring rent pushing families to the brink, and government regulations are failing to deliver any relief. In cities like Lagos, rent has jumped by over 80% in a year, forcing many to spend most of their income on shelter. Lawmakers have proposed measures like capping annual rent increases at 20%. But experts say these rules ignore the root causes: a massive housing shortage and underlying economic pressures. Nigeria faces a deficit of more than 20 million homes, yet fewer than 100,000 are built each year. Soaring construction costs, high interest rates, and land scarcity continue to drive rent up. Without a major boost in affordable housing supply and better access to financing, rent caps alone cannot solve what has become a structural crisis. The director of the Federal Housing Authority, architect Ezekiel Nya-Etok, joins us now for a conversation on the housing crisis in Nigeria, the solutions, and why the government's attempts to regulate rent is ineffective. Thank you so much for joining me here on Newsday. Good afternoon.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you again.
Well, we know one of the solutions to this housing crisis is to create more opportunities and more living spaces. So since assuming the office, do you have an idea of what the specific number of units that the FHA has added to the national stock, or how many are currently under construction?
Okay, thanks for having me again. And I would like this conversation to be as result-oriented as possible. While Nigerians would want to hear we've introduced 1,000, 5,000, 5,000, I think that it will not be as useful as asking what sort of foundations are being laid, what sort of efforts are being made, what sort of achievements have been taken so far, so that we will be able to see if there's a roadmap to easing our housing crisis that has been there for as long as I can remember. So while we have certain targets, like we are part of a whole, we have the Ministry of Housing, where we are one of the agencies under that ministry. You have a target of being able to inject about 100,000 housing units within a period of 4 years. And FHA is giving a target of being able to inject within the first line period nothing less than 6,000 housing units. But we look at this with respect to the deficit, and we think that while those targets seem reasonable, but they really don't meet our desires, our expectations as the housing delivery arm of the federal government. As a result, FHA took a different approach. Now, the first thing we could have done was to take one or two pieces of land that are around, rush up a few buildings, and show how we have built 5,000, 1,100. But led by Honorable Oyetunde Ojo, all of us, the management team, we are like experienced in the housing delivery. And somebody like myself, we talked about this for the past 30 years and counting. So we sat down and said, let's get things properly done. And the first thing we needed to do was get land. As a result, we went through 30 of the 36 states by road, predominantly. Our management, we engaged the state government. We changed the approach before of getting land from government and trying to build into a new approach of forming a synergy, forming a partnership with each of the states, so much so that we work together. So the states are strategic development partners with us. And within a period of, by February, we would have been 2 years. But within this period, in less than 2 years, we have gotten good prime land in a minimum of 26 of the 30 states that we've been to. I can say this categorically because as the Estate Services Directorate Executive Director, the land custody is within my purview. Now, that is one major thing we've done, but what is the use? In the past, people have been going around collecting land and doing nothing. And as a result, when we go to certain states, they are irritated. The governors are like, no, not again. And we said, please, this is a new management. Consequently, to make sure that we justify the confidence, we went into step 2 immediately. About a year ago, we started the procurement process for us to start the building. And procurement takes some time. But I want to say that we have succeeded in being able to go through those procurement processes to the extent that we have already done groundbreaking in Akwa Ibom State. We've also done that in Kaduna State. Now, before you can get to groundbreaking stage, because we are all professionals, you needed to follow the roadmap and check all the boxes to ensure that we have viable projects done. So as at today, I want to say with every sense of responsibility that our FHA estate under the new administration is going to take off this January in Akwa Ibom State. That will be closely followed by Kaduna State. And as a matter of fact, some days back or some weeks back, we were in Ekiti to see the extent to which we can also take off on that. And as we speak, I'm reporting to you from Port Harcourt, Rivers State, where I have already had very, very high-level interaction with the permanent secretary, and not the permanent, yes, permanent secretary lands, and also the secretary to the state government, and then the Port Harcourt City Development Authority. This team have come together to look at 3 prime locations, and later in the day, we're going to sit down for a very strategic meeting with the state governor. That's the extent to which people, as I'm dividing myself in the southeast, some of our EDs and partners are in other zones. So we're working together to see how we can actually produce houses. We're not talking about 5,000 now or 10,000, but enough houses within what we can do to make sure that Nigerians have houses.
Very, very good. In 2025, we know that the inflation drove cement prices and steel prices up nearly by 30%. Can you describe to us how you managed to navigate this and the discussions that are being had amongst your group on how to alleviate some of these pressures?
Okay, first I told you that the land registry and everything is under my custody. Also marketing is under my custody. And we've had gray hairs. You don't want to hear that Renewed Hope Estates, a 3-bedroom is selling for 90 million, 80. Those are not the sort of things Nigerians want to hear. They want to hear that the prices are affordable, that a 2-bedroom is going for, say, about 15 million, 20 million, depending on the location, okay? As a result, we have looked at, we have the executive director of project implementation being somebody who has been a 2-time commissioner for works, so he understands the dynamics. I am an architect, the executive director of finance and housing administration is a big-time developer, while the executive director of business development was an executive director in Federal Mortgage Bank. So we are all housing experts, not to talk of our MD CEO who comes in not just as a legislature, somebody who understands the dynamics, the laws and everything, but a developer himself. So when we sit down to look at things, we have to forget that we're not doing the sort of development we're doing as private developers, where we are doing prime properties, but developments for common Nigerians primarily to a great extent. As a result, we've had to now, as an architect and the rest, we look at the design component. Then we now look at the materials. Now we are going into studying strategic networking. I know my MD has had preliminary talks with some of the cement companies, some of the main companies that are into steel to say, look, this is something you should do for Nigerians. And there are so many things, I will not be at liberty to bring them out, some of them right now, but our target is to deliver houses that really make sense price-wise to the average Nigerian. We are also having talks with labor to see how we can have engagements that make sense, that are reasonable, that are realistic. I'll give you, for instance, I try to run this as fast as possible because time
yes,
is
please
never
do.
on the side of the media. Now, yes, for you to build a house, you're going to talk of the direct cost of building that house. Let's take a hypothetical situation of, say, a 2-bedroom bungalow. You're going to have the direct cost, say, about 15 million naira. That's contractor's cost. You're now going to add cost of infrastructure. As a policy in FHA, we don't build estates without infrastructure to the extent of having it gated, because we don't develop slums in Federal Housing Authority. So infrastructure normally takes about 25%. If you add 25% of that, then you now come into cost of funds. You add land charges and all those approval processes. At the end of the day, all these things double. So you see that a house that you build for 15 million, you have to sell at about 30 million before you talk in terms of your margin. So what do? Our MD CEO made sure that we went to governors and said, look, take off cost of land. And virtually all the governors have given us the land for free. That knocks off nothing less than 2.5 million, depending on the house type. Apart from that, we are now saying we do direct supervision because we have all the competencies. In my directorate alone, I have nothing less than 60 professionals.
Right.
These are people, and then the same thing with the project management, project implementation director. So basically what we are doing is looking at how we can reduce the plus, including our profit, to make sure that at the end of the day, the houses are delivered at a reasonable amount. These are what we're doing for Nigerians.
Well, it's really good to hear, and we wish you all the best of luck in this endeavor. We know it's not easy. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ezekiel Nya-Etok, the Director of the Federal Housing Authority.